Greetings my beautiful viewers, and I would like to take this opportunity to introduce you to my new rotating stand. It may look the same as the old one, but I assure you it is a different one, and this one wasn't already slightly broken when I got it out the box, so that's an improvement. I just thought it was polite to give it a formal introduction considering it spends so much more time on screen than I do. Just like last time, the first model painted was an old school Dreadnought, a Space Crusade Chaos Dreadnought to be specific. This was sent in by Inquisitor Groff, so thank you very much. This is one of those models that I've really wanted to paint for a long time. I added a bit of detail to the base so that it wouldn't be quite as plain and so it would fit in with the Space Crusade board. The paint job itself is based on the Emperor's Children from the game Space Marine, since I've just always loved that interpretation, plus purple is my favourite colour and I don't end up painting many things purple for whatever reason. Particularly happy with the free-handed symbols on the legs. The weapons are also not glued in place, but they fit pretty snug so they won't go anywhere and I can swap them out if needed. As suggested by the base, this was put together specifically for use in Space Crusade rather than 40k proper, but I could still use it as a Hellbrute if I wanted to. Next up is 3 more looters for my Rebel Grots. Once again, these are made from whatever I could find in the deepest, darkest recesses of my bits box, popped on top of an epic Land Raider and painted the same as the previous members of the squad that you've seen. A squad which actually has enough painted members to be legal now, so that's fun. I still have 4 more to paint, but considering how long it takes me to paint minis that aren't 3-point goblins, I think I'm making pretty good time. Pretty much everything there is to say about them was said in the last episode, so I'll just move on from these. Here we have a slightly different grot to normal. This is one of the big gun crew grots from, I believe, 2nd edition. After all, the revolution is for all goblins, even the pre-Gorka Morka ones. It's another model that was sent in by Rich, so thanks again. He sent in a handful of them along with the big guns themselves, but for now have this little lad and his screwdriver. Next we have a big model. I finally, after 8 years, finished my Daca Jet. I literally bought this thing when they were brand new, but I just wasn't happy with the paint job I was halfway through giving it, and so it languished in a box until earlier this year when I realised I could use it for my Rebel Grots. So I took out the pilot, replaced them with a gobbo, and started over again. Took me a long time to finish, been chipping away at it for months, mostly because it's just such a large model with lots of panels to edge, which gets tedious fast. Still, it's done now and I'm happy with it. Also nice to get a large model finished this year. It's been mostly taken up with tiny ones so far. If you're interested, the orc glyphs on the wings mean GRC, or Grot Revolutionary Committee, as a nod to this old bit of artwork of a cutter from Gorka Morka. Now for something unrelated to my Grot Rebellion, a 2nd edition Chaos Marine. He's the last metal Chaos Marine I have left from a small Chaos force I had back in 3rd, the rest were all sold. This one wasn't, just because he was in such rough shape, but I've managed to salvage him to be as good as new. Well, the arms don't fit perfectly, but I didn't have a matching pair. It's probably fine. He's painted up as a Renegade Imperial Fist based on the Dornian Heresy fan alternate universe thing. Mostly I just wanted to play with painting up a Chaos Marine in yellow since it's not something you see very often. Really happy with the yellow too, since it's a notoriously horrible colour to paint. All it was a few coats of Avalon Sunset with the recesses washed with Reikland Flesh Shade and then highlighted with Dawn Yellow. Here we have another converted HQ choice for my grots, a weird boy, or weird grot I suppose. He was put together largely because I just had this real urge to convert something, but I didn't have enough parts to make much, so this resulted out of a deep bits box dive. As I've done before, I added a few gobbos to the base to try and explain why he has a higher stat line than a single Gretchen should. These are actually 2 fantasy snotlings, and I want you to know that they both have their butts out. They just do. I also tried a little OSL, or Object Source Lighting, for the first time on the eyes here. Not the most elaborate, but I'm pretty happy with the result considering that it was my first try. It involved a lot of glazing. There are some bits on here that are a little rough, but since the model went from miscellaneous bits to fully painted model in like 3 days, I'm okay with it. I can always fix it up later after all, and at least now I actually have some psychic defense in the army. So remember when I said Rich also sent in some big guns? Well, here's an old splatter cannon that I'll be running as a Legends cannon. I added the star and popped it onto a 50mm base so it wouldn't fall over, although it's not really an issue with this particular model. Some of the old guns do fall over at the slightest breeze, so I wanted to keep all the ones I have consistent. Honestly, I think this model has aged really well. It's just a decent generic cannon, especially when not painted as vibrantly as you sometimes used to see it. Similarly, I also finished off another one of the gun crew. Technically there is a specific grot for the splatter cannon because he's holding the ammo for it, but until I've painted him then these two can go with the cannon to make a fully painted unit. Now for something else that's a little special. AC the Rock Devil very generously sent me some Chaos Squat exosuits, models that, like the Space Crusade Dread, I've wanted to paint up for a long time, in this instance because they are the pinnacle of Rogue Trader's goofy charmingness, so thank you very much AC. I decided to paint this first test one up in the same scheme as the Space Crusade Dread, because I thought it would be fun to make a tiny force of old Chaos models, the exosuits being run as Chaos Space Marine Chosen, which is also why I popped them onto 32mm bases. The sculpt on these is super rough, with casting errors all over the place and symmetry just being an alien concept for the most part. But with a bit of tender loving care, I think I've managed to get this one looking pretty respectable. Given that they resemble grim dark interpretations of the Yoke Folk from the Dizzy series, and that I've chosen to paint them up as Slaaneshi, I can't help but refer to this one as a Tenga egg. I'd say not to Google that, but you know, I'm not going to stop you, just go and do it at work, okay? But yeah, I have 4 more of these ready to paint, so hopefully I can get those done in the near future too. You know how there's models from previous editions that have weapon loadouts that are no longer usable? Well, this is perhaps the best example of that. A Space Marine carrying a Shuriken Catapult. This model was sent in by Shanus along with a bunch of other Rogue Trader models, so thanks a lot, man. Seriously, you folks have been sending in a lot of, cool old models for me to paint. I'm really grateful. Since this is a model I'm unlikely to ever get use out of on the tabletop, given the whole Shuriken Catapult thing, I thought I'd paint him up as a chapter that I've always wanted to paint but never really plucked up the courage to do. The Lamenters. I used the same yellow recipe that I did on the earlier Chaos Marine, which meant the only hard part was the shoulder pad, which, yeah, was pretty awkward, but I think it came out well. Also, like the exosuit, I popped him onto a 32mm base because it just felt right. Really pleased with it, and honestly, someone needs to stop me before I decide making a Lamenter's army is a good idea. I already have a Space Marine army, a Blood Angels one specifically, and I do not need another. Oh, and yeah, I suppose you're wondering how many regular Gretchen I painted this time around. 15 is the answer. Not quite as ridiculous as last time, granted, but I feel it's a respectable showing of goblins. As with the previous ones I've shown, there's bits and pieces of conversion work done on most of them. A weapon swap here, a little extra pouch there, nothing major, but just enough to help vary things up. Also, there's one unique grot, this one being a hidden reference to a D&D goblin I played a little while ago in a one-shot called Normal. Yes, Normal, that is his name. He's normal. It does mean that if I ever play him again, I'll have a model for him, so that's neat. He's made by combining the head from one of Badrook's grots with the body of another. Hell, his hat already had a star on it, it was perfect. As most of you have probably gathered, I do put all the models in these videos in the chronological order that I painted them. However, with some things like, painting tens of goblins, I do put them all lumped together so that they're not scattered through the videos. So if you're wondering which one was 69th chronologically, it was the Slaaneshi sex egg, which is a very nice coincidence. So, in the last 2 months I have painted 27 models, which brings my 2020 totals up to 73 models painted against 90 models bought. The purchase of many more grots has made my bought total a little more yikes than I was hoping for, but at least I've smashed last year's final total, which was just 59 models for the whole year. And whilst it's true that the 73 from this year are mostly small models, I am only halfway through the year, so who knows how many I'll have done by the end. I'm looking like I'll break 100 models, which would be exciting, wouldn't it?